Everybody should be aware of the risks to wildlife posed by the use of rodenticides or rat poisons. And we now know that many species of wildlife are affected by rodenticides, some of which can directly feed on the bait, and others, mostly predatory species, that can feed on those animals and then be exposed to rodenticides in that way. So the onus is on us to rethink our approach to rodent control to reduce the risks to wildlife. And we're on a farm. We're going to be speaking to Michael Loughlin, who's a rodent control expert and who's going to guide us through some of the main principles of best practice rodent control.
Effective rodent pest management on farms involves a combination of strategies in order to obviously bring rodents under control, but also to protect wildlife. This is called IPM, or Integrated Pest Management. IPM is a kind of a cyclical process, but if we begin with a situation where there is a rodent infestation on a farm, where do we start? Well, there's a thing called the risk hierarchy, and we've got to use whatever methods are bringing the least risk to the environment and to wildlife. So we start at things like mechanical controls, and trapping devices are very, very useful, particularly at the early stages of an infestation. There are ordinary spring rat traps are excellent. The Fen Mark IV trap, which is a very useful trap, can be used in tunnels along rat runs and can be a very effective way of bringing control. Don't forget that traps need to be checked on a daily basis, and you need to be careful that you're not trapping non-targets in these traps. We also need to consider biological controls. And what we mean by biological controls is the encouraging natural predators of rodents, to actually encourage them to come to the farm and to be part of the farm. And that would include things like owls and other birds of prey. And they're excellent pest controllers, and they're free. And there are some controls which are particularly suitable for use on farms that are not suitable for other environments. For instance, the use of an air rifle is an excellent way to bring down a population of rats, particularly at dawn or dusk. Chemical controls should only be used when all other methods have failed. You must have tried all of the other methods before you actually reach for the chemicals. Rodenticides are obviously very toxic substances, and they must be used strictly in accordance with product labels. It's also important to realise that rodenticide baits can't be used to monitor for rodent activity. They can't be used just in case rodents come back, and they can't be used to prevent rodent activity. Farmers are classified as professional users. Now, professional users can only use rodenticides for a 35-day period. Also, they can only use rodenticides in and around buildings. They can't bait burrows, and they can't bait open areas. These are proprietary bait stations. They present the bait, which must be tied, secured by wire inside the box, and the box must have a tamper-resistant closing device. The box must also be labelled with the labelling that is required by the product label, and that's extremely important. Bait boxes are extremely good at protecting children and farm animals and pets, but there are lots of small animals that can get in through this gap, and those small animals are then going to consume the rodenticide inside and can cause issues with wildlife by secondary poisoning and by primary poisoning as well. So that's important to remember. It is a legal requirement for farmers, professional users, to keep accurate records of all of their use of traps and their use of rodenticides. The kind of things that need to be recorded would be the dates and any notes from site inspections. So when you're monitoring, you need to do it on a regular basis. you need to keep notes of the results of your inspections. You also need then to record the quantities of rodenticide, if you're using rodenticide, the quantities that you've used, where you've used it, what type of rodenticide you've used, the dates that you've checked it, and the dates, of course, all important, the dates that you've actually taken up the remains of the bait. You also need to record the dates that you checked traps. It's very useful to keep a journal on the farm so that all of these records can be seen, as they are a legal requirement. Well, once rodent infestations are brought under control on the farm, you can then look into implementing the full IPM program, which is focused on prevention. When we talk about prevention, we really talk about three main elements, and that is the denial of food, water and shelter. If you start to remove any of those, you're making it very uncomfortable for rodent populations on farms. Food, water and shelter. Think about sanitation. Think about where you store your foodstuffs. Exclusion is another element. So farms are notoriously difficult in terms of proofing out rodents. Remember, 13 millimeters is enough to get a rat, into a building. They're notoriously difficult to proof, but what you can do is you can actually proof sensitive areas. So restricting feed and grain and other foodstuffs, restricting access to where they're stored by proofing methods will also help to bring rodents under control. Monitoring and identification and inspection is a critical element to keep IPM on the go. You've got to continuously do your site survey, do it on a regular basis, whether it's monthly or weekly, whatever you decide is appropriate. What you're going to do is you're going to record everything you see on the farm which needs some kind of remedial action. You're going to be also looking for early signs of infestation. You're going to be looking for droppings and smears and runs, rat runs and burrows. All of those elements are going to inform you at an early stage that you may have a problem. And at the beginning of an infestation, it's much easier to bring them under control. It's very important that everybody on the farm is aware of what is meant by an integrated pest management approach, and not just the whole idea of going for rodenticides in the first instance. And there's lots of supports out there. This document, Effective Control of Rodents, Pests on Farms, was produced by the Department of Agriculture, and it has a full layout of the best practice rodent control and use of rodenticides on farms.
So that is really, really important information, because we do need to change our approach to rodent control. We know the risks that there are to wildlife, and it does take a bit more effort to implement integrated pest management and to improve rodent control practices, but it is necessary, both from a legal perspective and also to ensure that there is healthy wildlife on the farm. And it is also a difficult balance to get, because we want to preserve and maintain natural habitats on the farm, but particularly in and around the farmyard where there can be issues with rats. And elsewhere in the farm, small mammals are to be encouraged. They're actually hugely beneficial, but it's getting rodent control right in and around the farmyard, and thinking firstly about the risks that there is to wildlife, and also thinking that the rodenticides, the chemical controls, should be the last resort, and only when other methods have failed and when their use is justified and required. And if you get to that point, then the information that Michael has provided in terms of their use is absolutely essential, and in fact a legal requirement. So we need to accept that whenever we use rodenticides, we are posing a risk to wildlife, and we need to go to that extra effort to change our mindsets and change our practices, and to use rodenticides as a last resort and not just as a first convenient option.